Hello, and welcome to the Student Experience podcast, where we'll be chatting to members of the University of Suffolk community, giving them the opportunity to share their experience with us. I'm Sam, and I'm a member of the Student Experience team, and in today's episode, we're joined by Emily Betts, who is a Level 6 history student. We discussed her time at the university so far, her plans after graduating, and her quest to compete at the 2028 Paralympics in Los Angeles. So, Emily, would you like to introduce yourself and the course that you're studying?
So my name is Emily and I am going into my third year of my history degree.
So what first attracted you to the University of Suffolk?
A few reasons really. Firstly, the course itself attracted me. When I applied, I think it was 4th in the country, so it was really high on the ranking. So for quite a small university, it's really, really impressive. And also the size of the campus. It's quite a small campus in comparison to other places. So for me, that was quite a big factor. I could get around the campus safely without worrying about any accessibility issues. And also, it was just a really nice place. I only live an hour away, so it was nice to go to a university in another place without having to stay in. So they're kind of the main reasons I was attracted to this university.
Did you go to some of the open days then?
Yeah, I went to an open day and an applicant day, and how I was treated at the open day really helped for my decision. The student ambassador team gave me an enlarged printout of all the what's going on that day, a map. I had a one-on-one campus tour as well, which really helped me to get an idea about the university. And generally it was just the campus, the open days were just such a great place to be because it really helped my decision.
So, I mean, you said that you're a history student. Is that what you've always wanted to study, or was there any other courses that you considered?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to study history. I did have a little bit of a crisis in between year 12 and 13 of, I'm not sure if I want to do this. But then I was quite solid on my decision. I always wanted to do history anyway, ever since I was little. So it was kind of set in stone, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, history is like super broad, could mean anything.
Yeah.
So what is it, your sort of favourite period?
My favourite period is medieval history. They've just introduced medieval modules over the past year or so. So I was really excited when they came in. But I love Anglo-Saxons, Normans. They're things I'm particularly interested in.
I love medieval history.
It's great, isn't it?
I don't know about you, but I really like the kind of like, almost like the little things. It's like, what did they do for jobs? Or like, how did they do, what did they do for entertainment? Or what food did they have?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Medical history, when they're like, this is how things used to be treated, or, that sort of thing.
That is quite interesting.
Yeah, there's some really good YouTube channels out there, like watch like Medieval Madness.
Yes.
That's really good. Like History Hit.
History Hit always really good with that.
Yeah. So how does the structure of the degree work?
So the structure of the degree, it was chronological in your first year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's roughly staying around that for the first year, and then second and third year, it kind of goes a bit all over the place, really. You might start off in one, like we started off in the 19th and the 20th century in our first module, and then we went back to Vikings. So we're kind of a little bit more everywhere, but all the modules seem to link in quite well with each other, as do the assessments. So it does work really quite well. But it's generally non-chronological, just almost when the lecturers are available, because it might be clashing in the timetable.
Does it work in terms of like, you do a module and then you do like an exam, like a A-level kind of history, in terms of you do an exam, you have to remember the dates, that sort of thing?
So we don't do exams. That's quite nice
about
the course, is that we don't do exams. We just have 1 to 2 assessments. In the first year, you generally have 1 assessment. From second year onwards, you have 2. One's a bit shorter, one's a bit longer. They vary between source analysis, presentations, essays, basically anything but an exam.
So when you were looking at courses here at the university and you'd come to the open days, were there any other courses that caught your eye, or were you ever considering anything else?
At one point I considered English, but I wasn't fully sold on the course, so I just stuck to history.
Was the course specifically that sort of you weren't super interested in the
Yeah,
modules? Or?
yeah, just the modules weren't that particularly interesting to me. I did look at it a few times, just at different periods, just to see if I was still interested or not interested, and I wasn't interested in the end.
Didn't have enough medieval literature.
Yeah.
No.
So you must be quite like, you're quite like a creative writer then, in terms of like, you know, you're good at breaking down bits of information and
Yeah.
trying to find maybe the pros and cons of certain parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a key skill any history student has anyway. But I'm quite good at summarising the information. So I find it as well with some of my friends, if they don't necessarily, they're like, what did they just say? I can generally summarise it for them, pick out the key bits in readings and put that into my own work.
So do you have to kind of like come up with answers? So there'd be a question on whatever it is, and then you have to say, actually, I think it's like this rather than like this, or...
Kind of. It's a bit more arguments, a bit more weighing up evidence.
Yeah.
Less so kind of, you've got your own opinion, but your own opinion also has to be backed up by other people. So you have to go out and research other historians that might think around the same way. But then equally, what's other literature saying of actually this might not be as we think it is.
Yeah.
So it's weighing up both sides. It's weighing up both sides of history, really. People will think it's happened and people think it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And then trying to see which one fits your own argument better, but also fits, perhaps, especially for the later periods, what is the generalised narrative of that area.
Yeah, I imagine it's like quite all-encompassing, you know, you sort of cover like ethics and philosophy and like sort of
Yeah, you do. You kind of cover a bit of everything, really. Sometimes, there's it gets a little bit deep.
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure.
Drilling into the mind and trying to understand the point of view of a slave. So one of our analysis was on Equiano and his memoir on the slave trade. You're then looking into also the ethics of the slave trade and actually what was Equiano's life after he escaped. And you're looking into like the ethics of slave trade and things like that and different statistics.
That's amazing. So do you have like quite interesting like discussions and maybe debates?
Yeah.
I imagine they get quite interesting.
They can get very interesting. They can get super interesting, especially when it runs. So in second year we had the Empire module, all about the British Empire.
Right.
And that brought up some really interesting things, including discussions of like, why don't we teach this in A-level or GCSE? And the answer to that, we were told, was basically it's either too complicated to do or teachers don't want to teach it because it brings up, there's too much to teach in the content and it gets really complicated, as we got a bit lost a couple of times because it just got so complicated. But it brings up, courses like that bring up such interesting conversations that perhaps you've never had in previous study.
I guess you can really see how it links to like history links to like current times. So you might be, like you said about empire, like there'll be questions now as do you teach that because of things that are happening, and you have to make those education has to make those kind of decisions in the curriculum.
You can definitely relate some things into your modern day of, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And chances are there might be an answer back in history that actually gives us the answers to why we don't do it now. Or in fact, if we're looking at some things that are happening currently, there's things in history of actually, I can see that. That's happened here. And now it's happening again. It's the same pattern. So that gives us quite a good contrasting for then and the modern day.
Yeah.
So are those group discussions, would you say they're like quite productive? Do you think, you sort of come up with new ideas by hearing what other people have to say?
Yeah, a lot of our group discussion comes, so we kind of work in like a seminar situation. So we have the first half's kind of a bit lecture-y, the lecturers talking to us, they're telling us information. And the second half, there's usually 1 or 2 readings we have to do before the session. We then discuss them readings. That's the main part of our sessions. But generally, we end up diverting off topic and we ask different questions which then bring up further discussions that perhaps weren't in the readings but actually would like to know more, or it expresses an opinion differently. So although we're basing a lot of our discussions on the readings, actually it's quite an open book in a sense of you can ask anything and like we can discuss it.
No, that's really good. I mean, it's important to sort of foster that environment where everyone feels like they can put their voice out there.
Do you get to go to like sort of like museums or that sort of thing?
So I know that the previous first years got to go to places like Sutton Hoo. My first trip, actually, we didn't have any trips in my first year. In second year, we went to the British Museum, and we got to look around the museum for quite a lot of the day. And then the lecturers stood and talked to us for a little bit and showed us some really significant things for the Empire module. And then that's kind of all we had at the moment.
I was going to say, in your first year, was it sort of a bit lockdowny still?
No, we were out of it at that point.
Okay.
We were out of it. We were out of the tier system and things like that. So we were all completely face to face. But we were kind of half online, half in person. So our lectures would be pre-recorded online, and then we'd come in 2 days a week for a discussion for a couple of hours. Now we're in for 3 hours, 3 days a week, and it blends both that lecture and seminar.
Okay.
You mentioned about COVID then. I guess one of the comparisons you have is the Spanish flu. 100 years ago compared to now, that might be something you've discussed in your...
No, we never actually got that far. Spanish flu hasn't been a massive talking point just because there's been so many other things. It's almost a smaller part of it. If someone brings it up, they bring it up and we talk about it, but they bring it over as like a general, this is what happened in this date. But the Spanish flu and things like that just never really brought up for point of discussion.
Yeah, in like 50 years, there's so much to say.
That'd be on the GCSE curriculum, probably COVID-19, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously your course is super varied and you get up to all sorts when you're in the classroom, but, you know, what does a typical day look like for you at the university?
A typical day, I get in quite early because I travel in. So I usually go and make my way to the classroom just because then I can pick my seat. I'm usually the first one in, so I've got a pick of the seat, you know. And then usually we start at 10, so I usually about have an hour and a half. If no one's in, I generally bring a book with me, or like my Kindle, and I'll do some reading. Or if I'm a little bit behind on my readings, which I have a couple of times, I look at the readings and I do some research, but that's very rare for me. If some of my friends come in, we just sit and talk, and then the session starts at 10, finishes at 1. And then sometimes I go to the gym that's just opened here, and then I go home, and sometimes I just go straight home and get on my own work there. And then a typical day would end with me usually going to judo. It kind of distresses me from university that day and actually helps me to think about what I've learned that day as well.
So it sounds like you've got you're quite full on. So how do you find balancing your time?
I'm really good at time management, and I've gotten better over the years. So I've been able to go and compete abroad and still get my assessments in on time without taking any extensions, which has slightly shocked, I think, the lecturers slightly. But generally, time management for me is a massive thing. I've got to really balance my time. So it works really well. I've got a system that works, and I'll be sticking with it. It's obviously going to get a bit difficult now. I'm in third year because I'll be balancing my dissertation along with my other assignments and doing judo, but I think that's something that I can work around really easily.
Yeah, I mean, they're both things that are clearly very important to you.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's the only way forward, I suppose. But it's good that you sort of got it all, you know, under control, because I would be all over the place. So, I guess another part of university life is obviously commuting, and it can take up a lot of time. So how do you factor that into your day? You know, does it take up a lot of time for you?
It takes me about an hour to get home, to travel in and get home. Depends on traffic. I have disabled students allowance, which allows me to get a taxi from my house to the university, which is so much better than taking the train. Yeah. Because that can be chaotic sometimes. Yeah. But it takes about an hour and a bit, depending on traffic. Sometimes it's been less, and I've been like, oh, got home really quickly. But generally now, so I always factor in a couple of hours in my day. So I leave my house really early, and I don't get home to about 3-4 o'clock. Just because travel time and doing other things. Sometimes I have course rep meetings, which means that I stay a bit later, so sometimes I get home a bit later. So I just factor everything in, and I just plan my day out and factor travel time around that.
Gosh, do you sleep like 2 hours a night?
No, I get a full 8 hours. It's fine.
That leads quite nicely, actually, to a question I wanted to ask about the support that the university provides and disabled student allowance and that sort of thing. Is that something that they've been quite good with?
Yeah, the university have been. I can't sing the praises of the university enough when it comes to helping me student finance and with disabled students allowance. So I have a visual impairment, which means I struggle with note taking sometimes because I might have visual fatigue or just other factors make it really difficult for me to note take independently. So I have a note taker. And I've had quite a few problems with this. First year, I didn't have one at all from an external company. The university kindly stepped in for free and gave me one of their note takers. Second year, I went through, I think, about 7 note takers from external companies. Every time the university and the course leader has stepped in and gone, no, we need to get this sorted. We need to find you another one ASAP. And they've given me a university one as a replacement. Reasonable adjustments wise, they've been really, really good. They're really particular. So it's like, what kind of paper do you need? What do you need? They're really specific to my own needs, which has been amazing. And then the communication between them and the course team is just brilliant. All the course team know about my needs, new and old staff. So it's never a worry. The university have been amazing. I honestly can't sing their praises enough.
That's really good to hear. So I guess if there's any students listening that may be entitled to disability student allowance and might be applying to university, you'd recommend here?
I mean, absolutely. They actually helped me scan some of the documents in and send it off to DSA, which was really good because I didn't know how to. So they helped a lot with that. They did my reasonable adjustments assessment early because they knew what I'd needed done earlier. They did my PEEP assessment early because, again, they knew I needed it. So it was just it was just amazing. In comparison to my previous experiences in education, it was just like night and day. It was just amazing. I was really shocked, actually, at how good it was.
Yeah, no, that is great to hear. I feel like I remember at like an all colleagues briefing that you'd said something similar. So that's really great to hear. So I guess that sort of ties in to some of the best things about the university. So what would you say is your favourite part about studying here?
I think my favourite part I think there's quite a few. I think, first of all, access to materials. We're very lucky, especially as history students, that we've got access to the Hold, which is our archive, and it's a brilliant place to be. So I'm really, really fortunate that we get to have things like that here. Also, other opportunities that are presented as well. You know, for example, you have the opportunity, and I know other universities do this as well, but the opportunity to be able to do things like course rep, student ambassador scheme is really good here. And generally it's just a nicer place to be. Not many universities are on the waterfront, for example, which means that kind of helps with the university life, gives you a bit of that outside mental break that you might need, and just support as well. The course teams are really, really good with supporting students and their needs. They really care. So that's some really nice things about studying here, is that you are cared about here. You have places to have breaks. There are places to have breaks. It's just a nice place to be, which is one of the best things about studying here.
That's really good to hear. And you mentioned a bit earlier about the support you received sort of in further education compared to now at the university. So maybe what are some of the other key differences that you found moving from presumably A-level history to...
Well, degree history is a lot chiller, I'm going to say, like, than A-level history. A-level history was very full on because you had a lot to cram in 2 years and you had your exams. Whereas in degree history, I found generally the pace, although we're in block learning, so it is high pace anyway, it was slower. You had time to think, you had time to hone things and get things wrong. And the lecturers here generally want to support you, and they are willing to support you. They're willing to hop on a Teams call and explain things to you. Whereas in A-levels, you were at the mercy of that teacher being available. You had like your hour or a couple of hours in that lesson, and then you were finished. And also the support here as well. In A-levels, you didn't get support with academic writing, which meant that writing essays and essay planning and things like that for exams was harder in A-level, whereas here in university, you have that support. You have people that can help you check. You have people that can help you with referencing, which is so useful and something that I wish I had in A-level.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point as well, but that you make about block, because I mean, a lot of students who studied A-levels, I think it's a good transition because it's maintaining that high pace of, you know, what they expect, but then it's actually quite unexpectedly relaxing because it's not quite as intense as having 4 different subjects or 3 different subjects that you're trying to balance.
And then trying to balance multiple assessments at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, particularly since your course isn't currently like very exam-based at all, right? So it's would you say that you sort of work better with coursework versus exams?
Yes, absolutely. I don't like the stress of exams, who does really? But coursework is generally better. People, I think generally everyone in the course finds the coursework just nicer to deal with. You can research in your own time. You don't have the stress of thinking what's going to come up. You know, what do I actually need? Especially in degree history, when things could get so broad. You need so much, and you need so much research. You need to reference so many different historians that it can get really overwhelming in an exam. So to not have that exam pressure is, I think, a massive relief for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely found that because I'm not very good at exams. It stressed me out.
Yeah, I only had my course here was all coursework as well. So again, I can vouch for that. So it's been at the end of level 5 now. So sort of looking back at your time so far, is there anything that sort of surprised you about university that you maybe weren't expecting?
I think this is unique to this university because we have generally smaller class sizes in subjects like history. How much the lecturers get to know you. I think if I was in another university and say a class of 200, I don't think the lecturers would even know I existed. They'd know I exist from a disability point of view, but generally to get to know you on a one-to-one basis, no. Whereas my class, we've only got 17 in my group, which is a really small number. So all the lecturers know us. We know them. They know us. They know the woes of our lives. And so that is something that really surprised me, how laid back the lecturers were. You can call them by their first name, which really surprised me. Yeah. So I've often sir or miss, which I took full liberty of that. I was sick of calling people sir and miss in school, which is, I think, is quite a nice thing. It makes you seem like they're human rather than kind of an academic. Yes, they are an academic in their own right. You know, they've earned their doctorate and everything, but that makes them more like a person, and it makes them more personal to approach, which then helps with kind of that relaxed atmosphere. So I think that's what really surprised me the most.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great to hear. I mean, I think that's sort of something we've heard over and over again, that the support is there. I mean, like one-on-one or like in small groups, it's much more direct than if you're talking to, as you say, a class of 200 or something. It's very difficult to get to every student. But, you know, now that you're going into your final year, how are you feeling? You know, what are you excited? Are you nervous? Or
I'm actually quite sad. I'm excited in one way because, you know, it's the end of your degree. You know, you've worked hard all this year and you can put it in your dissertation and other subjects, things like that. But I'm quite sad. I've really enjoyed my time at this university. And so I'm really sad for it to be over. I've loved the course. I love the course team. I've loved all the people that I've been in a group with. So it's quite sad in one way because I'm leaving them. But in another way, it's quite a nice time because you're all in it together. You're all wrapping up at the same time. So that's quite nice.
Just do a master's.
Yeah.
That's always the answer. I'm not sure.
Always the answer.
Just do a master's. That's what I did. So you mentioned that, you know, you're going into your final year now, and as we all know, dissertation comes with that, which is the big thing about level 6. So have you got any plans for your dissertation?
Yeah, well, I've been emailing the person that would be supervising. We've only got one person that specialises in medieval history, so it was a no-brainer who my supervisor would be. And I emailed him in my throughout my second year about things that I had an idea. We got together on a Teams call. We kind of came to the conclusion that the best course of action would be for me to do, because in medieval history is really difficult because we lack sometimes paper sources, so written sources. We have to use other materials such as archaeology. So I'm doing a interdisciplinary study into medieval Suffolk. I haven't quite got the date sorted yet. I'm still kind of researching, kind of deciding where I want to go. But that means that I can play around with archaeology, with place names, with coins. I've got so many other sources at my disposal, not just the paper sources.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That's a really cool idea, though. I think I never really considered that you could just, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You'll have a lot to work with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that it's sort of local based as well,
Yeah.
rather than just like a broad question, which
Yeah.
I imagine
Yeah.
is quite easy to.
I mean, I've kept the dates broad, but I quite I quite enjoy local history as well. So I'm quite glad I get to work with the things that I'm interested in. Because I've got so many things that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So I'm quite glad that I get to work with everything that I'm interested in while keeping the question quite focused.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. It makes sense. So, of course, with dissertation and all of that comes with it, comes graduation afterwards. So what are your plans, or if you have any plans at all after graduating?
I want to do a master's.
There we go.
There we go.
And I'm torn between staying here because I know the course team, I know the people really well, but also University of East Anglia have a really good medieval master's degree, so I'm kind of torn between the two at the moment. It's just thinking about the logistics of how I would get to UEA, because I wouldn't stay in, I'd travel. So it's just thinking logistically, how would I get there? And if I can't realistically think of something, then I'd stay at Suffolk.
Do you know if you'd even in the future maybe consider a PhD after your masters? And it's a long way off, but
That's kind of what I'm hoping to do, is to do masters and PhD.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot of people, I mean, at least in my experience, people that I know who have sort of, progressed into like postgraduate study, a lot of them are just sort of like, I'm not sure what to do next. I guess I'll do this.
Yeah.
You're like, I want to do this next. Like, this is the path that I'm going to take. So that's really cool.
Have you got any maybe like favourite medieval historians that you maybe take inspiration from, or maybe you look up to a lot? Or
I take a lot of my dissertation is based on kind of the gaps in a couple of like 80s literature. Mark Morris does some really good medieval books as well, as does Tom Holland. So they're kind of people that I follow quite a lot. I like listening to a lot of medieval podcasts as well. So there's loads. So Tom Holland runs a podcast with a modern historian. They touch on a lot of medieval topics. There's some really good podcasts and books out there for historians that are generally very well known and very well credited. So I kind of read them as much as possible.
Would you maybe look at, after you've done your masters and maybe PhD, like, are you thinking of staying in academia, maybe even a lecturer? Or?
Yeah, I'd love to be. I always wanted to be a teacher. That was kind of my main goal in life, was to be a history teacher. But my sight's deteriorated, so I can't do secondary school classroom management. It's just not safe. So I really wanted to be a lecturer. So then I'm still got history, being a history teacher, but in a different environment.
That's pretty cool, because I think a lot of people, I mean, it's always like, I want to be a teacher, but I think lecturing is actually sort of the route I would take if I were to get into something like that. I think, you're also working with people who might challenge you with, their ideas.
Yeah.
Not that 15-year-olds can't, but you've got other academics in the room who, specifically chose that subject, and they're just not just being forced into it by syllabus. So it's pretty cool. So I guess, when are you becoming the next history podcaster?
I don't know. I don't have any plans to do a podcast at the moment.
So, I mean, sort of looking back now, if you were to sort of say to yourself, maybe on your first day when you came here, any advice that you would give that to yourself?
I was so nervous on my induction day. We were all very nervous. I think that everything's going to be okay. the lecturers do care about you and care about your needs and kind of your time here at the university. Everything, it's all going to be okay. Everything will be sorted. There's nothing to worry about. I think that's what I tell myself, because I was so nervous.
Yeah, I think a lot of students are. And then with September coming up soon, that's going to be a big big thing for a lot of students. So you mentioned a little bit about it earlier, about your judo that you're participating in, and at the time of recording, it's the first day of the Paralympics in 2024. So I understand that you're hoping to maybe be in the Paralympics at the next Paralympics in 2028.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
I did my first international Grand Prix in February in Germany. So with that comes classification and world ranking points. And so you have to get to a certain point in the world ranking list to qualify for the Paralympics. Equally, you also have to be of the valid classification.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that I classify fine and then I get into the world ranking list where I need to be, and just do as many Grand Prix as British Judo put me forward for.
Did they have like a European Championships and the World Championships?
Yeah,
and that sort of thing?
We do have European Championships, World Championships, things like that. They just happen separately to the cited circuit.
Okay, that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I mean, how do you end up getting into judo? What was it that brought you to that?
My mum put me in it. I couldn't do PE in school because teachers refused to make it accessible in any way, shape or form. So I live 2 minutes away from my local judo club, and judo is a really good sport for people who are visually impaired because you start with the grip, you're already starting with that contact, and it can all be done by feel as well. So it was like, oh, here you go, have a go at this, and I just kind of stuck to it.
Sort of fell in love with it.
Yeah.
From that point onward. No, that's really cool.
So are you going to be keeping a close eye on this year's judo?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
and I'm sure you know a lot of the people there.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I'm really excited to watch the judo this year.
Have you competed with any of the people who are?
Yeah, my weight category. I'm keeping an eye on my weight category this year because I'm like, oh, I know that person. I fought that person. Or this has happened. Or I've watched this person.
Yeah.
Equally, I will obviously be keeping an eye on the 3 Brits that we've got out there as well.
Are they potentially in chance for medals or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all 3 of them have a really good chance of a medal. I mean, one of them is current Paralympic champion.
Wow.
So really hoping that all 3 of them get a medal, really.
That's great. Yeah, I personally can't wait for the Paralympic. Well, it started today. I can't wait to watch it and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I enjoyed watching the opening ceremony. But yeah, hopefully the closing ceremony also packs a punch, so that'd be really cool.
Have you ever been to like America before?
No, never.
So that'd be quite exciting. If you make it, that'd be really, really exciting as well.
For the international competitions, do they like fly you out, or do you have to like cover the expenses?
So at the moment, I have to cover my own expenses. British Judo organise it, but I then have to pay for it. At the moment, once I get out and do a few more, there is a chance then British Judo will fund it. Okay. But it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
very
sure.
expensive. But I try and do as much as I possibly can. We have a few smaller ones, a few opens that we can go to, which are cheaper generally. But the Grand Prix and stuff are so expensive.
I bet.
So come to our final question now, which is what we call our answer one, ask one. So you're going to answer a question from the previous guest, and you're going to pose one to the next guest. So the question we got for you is, did you always plan on coming to university, or did you have other ideas before?
I had always planned on coming to university. I think that was quite a clear path for me. So that was always my plan. That's never changed. It was just the course I had a bit of a crisis in. But no, university was always my plan.
I guess, are you like the first person in your family to go to university?
No, my mum went to university as well. She did nursing.
Oh, cool.
So was she a big advocate for you going to university as well?
She was just like, yeah, you can go. Like, that's fine. You can go. You're like your choice at the end of the day. But she was always like, yeah, university is probably the best path for you. And you always kind of listen to your mother. But no, it was always the course, the path I always wanted to be on.
Yeah, so that sounds like it's worked out pretty well, and you've chosen well, and you've got a clear route that you want to go to, which I know a lot of university students don't necessarily have. So yeah, I mean, it looks like you're smashing it, to be fair.
Amazing. So do you have a question that you would like to ask our next guest?
I'd want to ask, how has university changed you as a person? Has it changed you as a person, and how has it changed perhaps your life outlook, your job aspects? How has university changed you, both as a person and for potentially in your future career?
Yeah,
that's a great question. We might have to make that a regular question.
Yeah, that might be. We'll give you credit every time we ask that question. That's a brilliant question.
Yeah, that's really good. Cool. Yeah, we'll be sure to ask them. Cool. Is there anything that you sort of want to say sort of before we close this out to the people, to the fans?
I think I'd say to the people coming into first year, that university is not as scary as it seems. There's so many people in place to help you. Your lecturers are willing to help you. Your course mates are willing to help you. There's so many people here that are willing to help you. If you're ever stuck, just ask the question. No question is too big, too small. And don't be afraid to argue with them as well. We've done that quite a few times, argued with the lecturers, and we've come out completely unscathed. So it's absolutely fine to have an opinion and voice your opinion, because no one's judging you. So everything is going to be fine.
That's great advice.
I think that's a brilliant way to end. So until next time, it's goodbye from Emily.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Emily.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Student Experience podcast. If you would like to be a future guest, email studentexperiencesteam@uos.ac.uk or follow the links to our application form through our Brightspace page. You can also reach out to us through our Instagram page @UOS_student experience.